This is the story of how Basil II blinded 15,000 soldiers and destroyed an empire without killing anyone. One order, one winter day in 1014, 15,000 men systematically blinded and sent home, not executed, not ransomed, blinded. 99 out of every 100 soldiers lost both eyes. The 100th kept one eye, just enough to guide the others back to Bulgaria. When they arrived, their own Tsar saw them and died of shock within 48 hours. Within 15 years, the Bulgarian Empire ceased to exist. This was not cruelty, this was economic warfare. And by the end of this video, you will understand why blinding 15,000 men was more strategically devastating than killing them ever could have been. The year is 1014. Kleidion Pass in the Balkan Mountains. Winter, the Bulgarian army, 15,000 strong, is surrounded, trapped. The Byzantine Emperor Basil II has won. The battle is over. The Bulgarian soldiers wait for what comes next. In medieval warfare, this moment is predictable. The victorious army kills the defeated, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. But the outcome is always the same. The enemy dies and the war continues until one side has no soldiers left to field. Basil II does not kill them. What he orders instead is so calculated, so economically devastating, and so psychologically horrific that it will earn him a title he will carry for the next 1,000 years. Basileos Bulgarictonos, Basil the Bulgar-Slayer. But he does not slay them, he does something worse. He turns them into weapons, not weapons against Byzantium, weapons against Bulgaria itself. Basil's order is precise. Every 100 soldiers, 99 will have both eyes removed. The 100th soldier will have only one eye removed, just enough vision left to guide the other 99 home. 15,000 captured soldiers, 14,850 completely blinded, 150 left with one eye, all of them sent back to Bulgaria. What follows is not a military campaign, it is economic annihilation. The march home through winter mountains takes weeks. The blinded soldiers walk in long columns, each man's hand on the shoulder of the man in front, guided by the few who can still see with one eye. When they finally arrive at the Bulgarian capital, Tsar Samuel, the man who sent them to war, sees what has become of his army. He suffers a stroke, he dies 2 days later. Bulgaria never recovers. Within 15 years, the Bulgarian Empire ceases to exist entirely, not because Byzantium conquered it militarily, because Basil II discovered something more powerful than conquest, economic collapse through calculated cruelty. This is the story of how one order, delivered in the freezing mountains after a battle most of history has forgotten, destroyed an empire more completely than any army ever could. And the terrifying part is this: it worked because the mathematics of suffering were on Basil's side. Before understanding why Basil blinded 15,000 men, there is a question that makes the entire story more disturbing. Why didn't he just kill them? Execution is faster, cleaner, cheaper. Medieval armies did it constantly. So why did Basil choose a punishment that required more effort, more planning, and more cruelty than simply putting 15,000 men to the sword? The answer reveals the economic logic of psychological warfare, and it is far more calculated than it appears. The Byzantine-Bulgarian conflict in the early 11th century was a grinding, exhausting war of attrition. Bulgaria, under Tsar Samuel, controlled much of the Balkans. Byzantium, under Basil II, wanted that territory back. Both empires were Orthodox Christian. Both spoke similar languages. Both drew soldiers from the same kinds of agricultural societies. This was not a war of civilizations. It was a war of two nearly identical empires fighting over the same land, the same tax base, and the same strategic position in southeastern Europe. For 30 years, the war ground on. Byzantium won battles. Bulgaria won battles. Neither side could deliver a knockout blow because both sides could replace losses. Medieval Balkan armies were not professional. They were seasonal Levi's, farmers who fought during campaign season and returned to their fields afterward. As long as the agricultural base survived, both empires could keep raising armies. Basil II understood this. He had been fighting Samuel for decades. Every time he defeated a Bulgarian army, Samuel raised another one. Every time he captured territory, Bulgarian raiders took it back. The war was economically unsustainable for both sides, but neither side could afford to quit. Basil needed a way to break the cycle. Not by winning more battles, he had already won plenty, by making it impossible for Bulgaria to raise another army ever again. The traditional method of achieving this was depopulation. Kill so many Bulgarian soldiers that there are not enough men left to fight. But depopulation has a problem. Dead soldiers are mourned, honored, and turned into martyrs. Their deaths make the next generation more determined to fight. Killing 15,000 Bulgarian soldiers would hurt Bulgaria's military capacity, but it would also enrage the Bulgarian population and guarantee continued resistance. Basil needed something that would destroy Bulgaria's capacity to fight without creating martyrs. He needed a punishment that would make the Bulgarian people lose the will to resist, and he needed to do it in a way that cost Byzantium nothing to maintain. The blinding order was not cruelty for its own sake. It was economic warfare at its most ruthlessly efficient. The mathematics of Basil's order are so precise that they reveal the depth of planning behind it. He did not blind everyone. He did not leave everyone partially sighted. The ratio, 99 fully blinded, one left with one eye, was calculated to achieve a specific result. And understanding what that result was makes the entire act far more disturbing than random brutality. After the Battle of Kleidion, 15,000 Bulgarian soldiers are in Byzantine custody. Basil has several options. He can ransom them back to Samuel for gold, the traditional medieval approach. He can integrate them into the Byzantine army as auxiliary forces. He can execute them. He can let them go. He does none of these. Instead, he orders his soldiers to begin the systematic blinding. The process takes days. 15,000 men. Every 100 men, 99 have both eyes removed with heated metal or blades. The 100th has only his right eye removed, leaving the left eye functional enough to see. The purpose of leaving one eye in every 100 men is not mercy, it is logistics. Basil wants these men to reach Bulgaria. He wants Samuel to see them. If all 15,000 were completely blind, they would die in the mountains during the march home. They would never deliver the message. The one-eyed guides ensure the blinded soldiers make it home alive. Each guide leads 99 blind men. They walk for weeks through winter terrain. The cold is brutal. The journey is agonizing. But they survive because the one-eyed men can see just enough to navigate. This is the genius of the cruelty. Basil has created a self-delivering weapon. He does not need to feed these men. He does not need to guard them. He does not need to transport them. They transport themselves. And every step they take toward Bulgaria is a step toward the psychological and economic collapse Basil has engineered. When the columns of blinded soldiers finally arrive in Bulgaria, the population is horrified. These are not corpses. These are living men. Fathers, sons, brothers, all of them permanently disabled, all of them requiring care for the rest of their lives. Tsar Samuel sees them. According to Byzantine chroniclers, he collapses immediately. He suffers what modern medicine would recognize as a massive stroke. He dies 2 days later on October 6, 1014. The sight of his blinded army kills him more effectively than any Byzantine weapon ever could. Here is the part of the story that makes Basil's strategy truly horrifying from an economic perspective. A dead soldier costs his family one funeral. A blinded soldier costs his family 30 years of care. Basil did not just remove 15,000 men from Bulgaria's army. He converted 15,000 men into permanent economic drains on Bulgarian society. And the numbers behind this calculation are devastating. In medieval agricultural societies, survival depends on labor. Every able-bodied man contributes to farming, herding, construction, or trade. When a man dies, his family mourns, but they adjust. His land is redistributed. His labor is replaced. Life continues. When a man is blinded, he cannot farm, he cannot fight, he cannot work, but he still needs to eat, to be housed, to be clothed. He becomes entirely dependent on family or community support, and in an agricultural economy where most people live close to subsistence, supporting a non-working adult is economically crippling. Multiply this by 15,000 men. Every blinded soldier is now a dependent. Most of these men are young, in their 20s or 30s. They will live for decades. Their families must care for them. Communities must absorb the cost. But the economic damage goes deeper. In medieval Balkan societies, extended families work the land together. Removing one man from a farming household does not just remove his labor, it forces others to compensate. His wife must do his work. His children must take on adult labor years earlier. His aging parents, who expected him to care for them, must now care for him. The opportunity cost compounds across generations. A blinded 25-year-old man should be in his most productive working years. Instead, he will be dependent for the next 30 to 40 years. The food he consumes, the care he requires, the labor diverted to support him, all of it represents wealth that Bulgaria can no longer invest in economic growth or military capacity. Now consider the psychological cost. A dead soldier is mourned, honored, and eventually forgotten. A blinded soldier is a daily reminder of defeat. Every meal he eats, every piece of clothing his family gives him, every winter his family struggles to keep him warm, all of it reinforces the same message: Bulgaria lost. Resistance was futile. The war cost more than anyone can bear. This is why Basil's strategy is more devastating than massacre. Massacre creates martyrs, blinding creates despair, and despair is far more effective at breaking the will to fight than anger ever could be. Tsar Samuel did not die from injuries. He did not die from poison. He did not die in battle. He died from seeing what had been done to his soldiers. The psychological shock of the blinded army killed him more effectively than any Byzantine sword, and when he died, the Bulgarian resistance died with him, because what Basil had done was not just militarily decisive, it was symbolically annihilating. When the blinded soldiers reach the Bulgarian capital, they arrive in long, shuffling columns. One-eyed men leading chains of blind men, all of them stumbling, all of them broken. The sight is apocalyptic. This is not an army returning from defeat. This is something worse, an army that has been turned into a monument to helplessness. Tsar Samuel watches them arrive. He sees men he sent to war reduced to complete dependency. He sees the future of Bulgaria written in their empty eye sockets, and he collapses. Byzantine sources describe it as divine judgment. Modern historians suggest stroke or heart attack brought on by extreme emotional shock. Either way, the result is the same. The man who led Bulgarian resistance for 30 years dies within 48 hours of seeing his blinded soldiers. His death is not just the loss of a ruler, it is the collapse of Bulgarian morale. Samuel was not just a king, he was the symbol of Bulgarian defiance against Byzantium. As long as Samuel lived, resistance felt possible. When he died, killed not by Byzantine weapons but by the sight of what Byzantium had done, resistance felt pointless. Bulgaria's nobility fractures. Some seek terms with Basil. Others try to continue the war, but without Samuel's unifying presence, coordination collapses. Within 4 years, major Bulgarian cities are surrendering without siege. Within 15 years, the Bulgarian Empire ceases to exist as an independent state. Basil achieves what 30 years of conventional warfare could not accomplish: the total absorption of Bulgaria into the Byzantine Empire. And he does it not by conquering cities, but by breaking the will of an entire people. Basil's blinding order did not just destroy Bulgaria. It created a reputation so terrifying that for the next 2 centuries, mentioning Basil's name was enough to make Balkan populations surrender without fighting. The economic logic of his cruelty became a strategic asset more valuable than any army. Because after Kleidion, everyone knew resisting Byzantium was not just militarily dangerous, it was economically suicidal. After 1014, Basil's reputation precedes him. When Byzantine armies approach a city, the population does not just fear military defeat, they fear what comes after. Will Basil blind their sons? Will he turn their men into permanent dependents? Will he deliver economic ruin disguised as mercy? This fear is rational. The blinded soldiers are living proof that Basil's cruelty is not random. It is systematic, calculated, and designed to maximize long-term suffering while minimizing Byzantine costs. Cities that surrender immediately are treated relatively well. Cities that resist face the possibility of something worse than death. This is psychological warfare at the strategic level. Basil does not need to blind another 15,000 men. The threat is enough. The memory of Kleidion becomes a weapon more effective than siege engines or cavalry charges. By 1018, the last remnants of Bulgarian resistance collapse. Basil annexes the entire Bulgarian Empire into Byzantium. He does not need to occupy the territory with overwhelming force. The population is too broken, too economically devastated, too psychologically shattered to resist. For the next 150 years, the Balkans remain under Byzantine control. The memory of the blinded soldiers fades into legend, but the strategic lesson does not. economic warfare that targets the will to fight is more effective than battlefield victories that only target soldiers. The question that historians still debate is whether Basil's blinding order was an act of rage, an act of calculated strategy, or something in between. But the economic results are undeniable. Blinding worked. It achieved objectives that decades of conventional warfare could not. And the reason it worked reveals something fundamental about the economics of cruelty. Sometimes the most effective weapon is not the one that kills the most people. It is the one that makes survival unbearable. Basil's blinding strategy succeeded because it attacked Bulgaria at every level simultaneously: military, economic, psychological, and symbolic. Military: 15,000 soldiers permanently removed from Bulgaria's fighting capacity. Unlike prisoners who can be ransomed or exchanged, blinded soldiers can never fight again. Economic: 15,000 men converted from productive workers into permanent dependents. Bulgaria's agricultural economy absorbs decades of compounding costs. Psychological: Tsar Samuel's death, Bulgarian morale collapse, the will to resist destroyed more thoroughly than any battlefield defeat could achieve. Symbolic: the blinded army becomes a monument to Byzantine power and Bulgarian helplessness. Every blinded soldier walking the streets of Bulgarian cities is a daily reminder of what resistance costs. The alternative, executing 15,000 men, would have achieved only the military objective. It would have removed those soldiers from Bulgaria's army, but it would not have created economic devastation. It would not have broken morale so completely. It would not have killed the Tsar. And it would not have created a reputation that made future resistance feel futile. Basil understood this. The blinding was not sadism, it was strategy, cruel strategy, but strategy nonetheless. And it worked because the economics of suffering were on his side. Basil's strategy did not disappear with the Byzantine Empire, it just evolved. The core logic, that creating permanent economic burdens on your enemy is more effective than killing them, is alive and operational in 21st century conflict. And once you see the pattern, you see it everywhere. Modern warfare has rediscovered what Basil understood in 1014. The most devastating attacks are not the ones that kill the most people. They are the ones that create the most suffering that the enemy must sustain over time. Refugee crises as weapons. When modern conflicts deliberately displace populations, the goal is not just to remove people from territory. It is to force neighboring countries to absorb millions of refugees, creating economic and political strain that destabilizes entire regions. Syria's refugee crisis destabilized Europe. Rohingya refugees strained Bangladesh. Displaced populations become economic burdens on host countries in exactly the way Basil's blinded soldiers became burdens on Bulgaria. Sanctions that target civilian populations. Economic sanctions are designed to make life so difficult for a country's population that they pressure their own government to change policy. The population does not die, they suffer. They become economically dependent. They lose the capacity to resist. This is Basil's logic applied at the national level. Landmines and unexploded ordnance. A dead soldier costs one funeral. A soldier who loses a leg to a landmine requires decades of medical care, prosthetics, rehabilitation, and family support. Landmines are not designed to kill. They are designed to maim, to convert combatants into permanent economic drains on their own societies. Veterans with PTSD and disabilities. Modern militaries understand that creating lifelong disabilities in enemy combatants is often more strategically valuable than killing them. A traumatized, disabled veteran requires state resources. A dead soldier does not. The pattern is always the same. Maximize the long-term economic cost to the enemy while minimizing the immediate cost to yourself. Basil did not need to feed, house, or guard the blinded soldiers. Bulgaria did. Modern conflicts that create refugee burdens, disability costs, and economic devastation operate on the same principle. The most effective weapon is not the one that destroys the enemy. It is the one that forces the enemy to destroy themselves trying to survive the consequences. History remembers Basil II as the Bulgar-Slayer. The title suggests wholesale slaughter, but Basil did not slaughter the Bulgarians. He did something arguably worse. He made them watch their sons, fathers, and brothers become permanent dependents. He turned Bulgaria's army into Bulgaria's burden, and he did it because the mathematics of cruelty were more effective than the mathematics of killing. The question is not whether it worked. The question is what it reveals about the economics of warfare itself. Basil's contemporaries called him a monster. Byzantine chroniclers, even those writing to glorify him, describe the blinding with visible discomfort. Modern historians debate whether the act was justified by military necessity or whether it crossed into inexcusable barbarism. But from a purely strategic perspective, the blinding order was devastatingly effective. It achieved goals that conventional warfare could not. It ended a 30-year conflict decisively. It secured Byzantine control of the Balkans for more than a century. It cost Byzantium almost nothing to execute and nothing to maintain. The horror of Basil's strategy is not that it was irrational. The horror is that it was rational. The blinding worked because the economic logic was sound. Creating permanent burdens on an enemy population is more effective than killing them because the dead stop costing resources but the disabled never do. This is the lesson Basil teaches, and it is a lesson that warfare has never forgotten. The cruelest strategies are often the most economically efficient, and efficiency in war matters more than morality. Basil II blinded 15,000 soldiers and destroyed an empire without killing anyone. The soldiers lived, their families lived, Bulgaria lived, but none of them ever recovered, and that was always the point.